a community's income with the income changes in the district. And in every case, the district income changes have gone significantly up while the communities are flat. So if the economic reality for your community is flat, why are we paying and benefiting beyond parity? Because all that does is create a divide, doesn't it? Don't you all get mad when you see that? Hey, I'll say no to every levy from now on. Well, that's not what necessarily education needs. They might need more money at some point, but the distrust that this creates is never going to recover. Because you're never going to believe they need money again, because you've got this pay and benefit system that's way out of touch with parity. And you're going to say no from now on. Well, we might need the money. So I think there's an honest way to approach this. And if the community's income increased by, and I forget what Medina did last year, but if your community's income increased by 1%, then I think that's appropriate to say that's what the district personnel should get. If it increased by 5%, I think it's appropriate to give those kinds of raises inside the district. That is not what's been happening. So again, the divide is getting even deeper because we have no parity in the system. So I'm suggesting here that we create parity, and then everybody in that community, including district employees, will want that community to prosper. Because the better everybody else does, the better they do. Now the system works for everybody if we do something like that. Number 2 is allow only one levy request per year. You guys ever feel like you're just beat up and beat up and beat up?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so 1 per year. And I would prefer that we suggest that be November. That's the big election, that's when everybody has to get out. Let's stop trying to sneak these May and August levy votes in. It's just not right. And then they try to do it very stealthy, because they know the people who are invested in that outcome are going to get to the polls. And you people, if you don't know about it, you won't get there. But unfortunately for Clear Creek Township, which is where I live, the Clear Creek Township trustees put a levy on the ballot in May, thinking that philosophy would work for them, but they found out that they actually mobilized the no voters that time. I'm asking them not to put the levy back on in November, because our district has a renewal levy on it. It's the same money, we just need to operate on the same money, and I'm scared that Clear Creek Township fire levy will mobilize the no voters, even against me. And I just heard Thursday night, somebody screamed it out loud at the meeting, that if I support the levy, it will pass. Because I'm a no voter, typically. So they said, all we need is for Kohls, Regano, and Petroni to support that levy and it'll pass. And I think there's something to be said for that, because even if a strong conservative stands up and says, well, I need this money, but I'm afraid the Clear Creek Township will mobilize the no voters even beyond my control. If they've got a ridiculous levy on there, which they do. Anyway, one time, and did you know that as a voter, you cannot repeal a levy more than once in 5 years? So if you got out there and got petitions signed and you got a reversal on the ballot, you can only do one every 5 years. But they can put a levy on the ballot 3 times a year.
Wow.
Yeah, Clara.
She has a question.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Let's take it a step further in regards to teacher salary.
Mm-hmm.
Now, from what I'm understanding, we're trying to make teachers accountable for
Right.
our children's education.
Right.
So if we have these tests that the children have to take based on the teacher's ability to perform their tasks of getting the subject matter across,
Mm-hmm.
and a teacher has to take proficiency tests, am I understanding that?
No.
No, for student, okay, but, so if they don't have to take the proficiency tests, and if you have a teacher whose students don't score well, why should that teacher make the same amount of money as the rockstar teacher?
You're referring to the step raises, which I hope go away quickly.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know, that, I think that's on my list. I think that should be, we need to abolish the step raises. Now, the state mandates that every district must have a step schedule, but the top salary of their state mandated step schedule is less than we start our teachers at. So the whole thing doesn't even work now. It's silly. It's silly. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, you're talking about if a community increases by 1%, then
Their
the
income,
teachers-
their household income. Yes.
If the average income in a community goes up 1%,
Yeah.
teachers pay should go up 1%. If it goes up 5%, they go up 5%. I
Right.
agree with you.
Right.
But let's start at a level playing field. If they are already 30% above everyone else, or 20% above everyone else, then this is just going to continue to keep them 20% above everyone else.
I agree.
So this doesn't do anything to, I mean, teachers in Strongsville were screaming bloody murder because they wanted them to cap what they had to pay for health care at $200 a month. And the teachers were upset with that. The school board wanted to cap it at $200 a month. Good grief, I pay $700 a month.
Right, I do too.
So, parity is fine, but let's start at a level playing.
So you're saying there needs to be an adjustment initially?
Or there needs to be a waiting period before we start upping that extra 1% or 5% until we get closer to parity.
Right. And I'm telling you that the level of people in the district, the percent of people in your district that have higher ed degrees versus the people in your community that have higher ed degrees, there's often the disparity there. So it's really hard to compare apples to apples. In our district, for example, and I'll give you an Upper Arlington example. I just did Upper Arlington's presentation Wednesday. Wow, they're the poster child for taxpayer abuse. And yes, I said that on camera. That is unreal, the way they do things. But anyway, just in Springboro, for example, and our average teacher or average staff salary is low because we've been able to hold things still for a while. So it's low on the scale of the state averages. Our median household income is $62,000, which is high in this state. It's high. It's one of the highest in the state. So even with that being the case, when I calculate out the hourly wage of Springboro residents versus the hourly wage of a district employee from custodian to superintendent, so everybody, they are 20% higher. Even though we've held things still for a while, so you're right, there's a disparity initially. Even in a district where 60% of our households have higher ed degrees and 60% of our district personnel have higher ed degrees, because now I can compare apples to apples. Now I can say, okay, that's not a factor in this calculation. So you're right, it already starts out with a higher level of pay. And I'm not saying, you know, how a community should vote on that, but I feel like I didn't have a part to play in that. So I probably can't change that. I don't want anybody to take a pay cut. We've had to live with that significance. I wouldn't wish that on anybody, but at least we can start pairing these changes in income. And they start out, okay, so we get a complaint all the time, is that teacher salary, starting salary, in our district is $34,600. So in most districts across the state, the average starting salary for a teacher, and that's for a 9-month contract, is $35,000. That's across the state. That's about normal. And so they say, well, that's too low. How could anybody raise a family on $35,000? So then I started doing more homework, because that's what I do, much to people's nightmare. But I found out that the average starting salary for any college graduate is $36,000, and that's for a 12-month contract. So there's not unfairness in this system. In fact, there's fairness plus some. Because those other people are getting a healthcare cost split that's more like a 50-50 split. Whereas we know in the public sector, it's much better than that. So again, we have to get to parity, because we will always have this divide between the public sector and the private sector until we get things moving together. And I think the people inside the district need to understand that, just like the people outside the district, but they don't invite me to come talk to them. Well, it depends on who you ask what a pay freeze is, Connie, because in the district, they just did this in Upper Arlington, actually Hillsborough. Last week I had Worcester on Monday, Hillsborough on Tuesday, and Upper Arlington on Wednesday, and then my own board meeting on Thursday. So you can imagine, busy, but I think it was in Worcester. Teachers said, we have not had a pay raise in 5 years, when I just showed on a slide that their average salary went up $4,000. Whereas a Hillsborough residence went down $300 during the same time. So, we're on different trajectories. And a teacher yelled at me and said, we haven't had a pay raise in 5 years. And I said, but you've had steps, right? She goes, well, yeah, but we have not had a raise on the base. So they keep going back to that school speak. And again, I'm just saying, guys, stop. Stop saying that, because when the community finds out that that's not true, they get mad. So stop using language that isn't consistent with what the community uses, because they find out that you have been getting step raises and it's still a raise. You can stop and call it a step, but once you guys figure out that that's nonsense, you get mad. And you have a right to get frustrated with the language difference between the two. Go ahead. You know, this is my problem, and I just said to you what I believe is that, unfortunately, you guys invite me to come talk. They don't want to hear what I have to say. They don't want to talk about parity, so they don't invite me to their functions. What they're typically having presented at their functions are how overworked and underpaid they are. So I think they believe that, and you guys believe there's disparity, so again, we're not able to communicate because they don't want to hear our message that there's disparity. They don't want to see the proof that there's disparity, they just want to go on strike. So our union just gave their association permission to give us a 10-day notice. I mean, we're at that point. We're going to be Strongsville probably in a month or so. But, you know, we just can't seem to talk the same language in the same room at the same time, because their association tells them something very different than what is reality. Oh, I would love some help with that. I think that's an appropriate question. Anyway, I've got a whole bunch of these. Are you telling me I gotta stop talking? When he stands here, I think that's I gotta shut up.
What's your top salary in that spring?
Oh, ours caps at 78.
It's what does, so it's 34 to 38, outside of 90.
Wow, that's a good gig. You've done the math, I can tell.
28 hours a week.
I know.
Teacher, you know you put in a lot more.
Obamacare kicks in next year.
28 hours a day, which is legitimate.
Well, I'm just saying that
28 hours a week, which is part-time.
everybody I know with a job that's a salaried job puts in more than 8 hours a day. They do. They do. So anyway, Jim, what's my time? Am I at the end? Yeah. Yep. Sure. Hey, I am not smart enough. I told Connie I'm not even smart enough to do her thing on June 5th, and she said, yes, you are, you're coming. And I said, I'm really not your person. Yes, you are. Thanks, guys. But let me get through these because, hey, Jim has this whole PowerPoint. So all of this you can get from him. Every single slide you can get from him. And it has all of these, I think it's 15 points that I think we should go to the legislators with. And if we can't get it done legislatively, and here's what they're telling me, when I was calling them and asking for help with this whole policy thing, I had the ACLU breathing down my neck, I have teachers breathing down my neck, and the left-wing community members breathing down my neck. I said, I need help, and they said, we're not gonna legislate this, Kelly. Be a big girl now and go handle it. I am a big girl now, and I say that all the time, I'm big, I can handle things, and you know, this is not fat, this is thick skin. I can handle it. But it gets a little tough when you got 300 people. I had 3 police officers ready to take them out. At one moment I said, Chief, can you help me out here? Because I told her to be quiet twice. I'd be escorted out. I'd love to do it myself, but I have to sit here. Anyway, so we've got all these things. I'm going to have to let you go, but Jim can send them to you. But legislative ideas, I'd love you to look through them and help me out if you can. What would really help me out is these things that we handed out today are reprints, things I thought that you might like to read through. My organization needs help with that because again, the travel comes out of my own pocket. This comes out of the little bit that we get for people registering on OSBLC. I use that money to get reprints to give out to people and help educate people about education. So if you can go online to OSBLC and you can register as a member, it's just $40 a year. And you can help us out, get things done. My legislative analyst is also an hourly wage person. I pay her right now out of my pocket. But I would love it if we have enough membership that I could pay her out of that. So any help you can give us, we'd appreciate it, okay? Thanks, guys.
All right. Great. Great. At any rate, wow. I'm amazed. Kelly knows so much and has a very easy way of sharing it with us. Even I could understand what she was saying. So I'm very glad she came in here. I think her suggestions are great. We have a couple of local legislators that do have some kind of influence down in the House and the Senate. Batchelder, Hall, and Alhoff. And we'll definitely make sure that they get this recommendation. Others of you who are inspired to write, I appreciate you also writing them. You know, we've got these guys working for us, and politicians thrive on recognition. They just hate to be ignored. So when we get in touch with them and let them know what we would like them to do, they like that. And when they do it and get a pat on the back, they love it. Let's see. Yeah, I definitely recommend people to help out with Kelly Kohls and what she's doing. Also, McFan, we have our expenses too. Scott's holding up the big bucket in the back, so anything you can help with, we'll pay the, what was it this month that we just got that date?
What's that?
There was something that came in. Some insurance thing or administrative, whatever.
Yeah, website.
Right. And be sure to attend that the upcoming events. If you're interested in education in particular, there's that Common Core event on June 6th, and you'll get to hear more of Kelly Kohls there.
Sorry.
Right.
She's insisting.
Right. Any further business we have to transact here?
I've got some movies, and the idea is to, give them out and then keep them, rotating. You can either give them back to us or pass it on to a neighbor and encourage them. But I have three, They Come to America Part 2, and also I have a Frack Nation. So if you'd like to see these movies, haven't had a chance to get out to see them, borrow it and just keep it moving. So, yeah.
What's the $2.5 documentary I watched last night? They thought
The immigration, yeah.
it's just
Sure.
Kelly being here from the school board, there's also a young woman, named,
I was at a meeting in Chardon for the Common Core, an informational meeting by Melanie Elsley and the American Roundtable. And I don't know if you've heard of Sarah Fowler. Have any of you heard of Sarah Fowler? You know Sarah? She is a young woman of 24 years old, and she got herself elected on the Ohio State Board of Education. Okay, now that's impressive. Now the other thing that I like to tout is the fact that she's a homeschooler. Okay, she saw what was going on in our school systems, and she thought, oh no, something's got to change. And she also saw that they were going to eliminate all other choices. So she beat, I believe, the incumbent and two other people that were running. So she went against some really big odds, but she actually just begged for people to come to the Ohio State School Board meetings because they basically feel that if there's nothing, if nobody's saying anything, everything's fine and everything's dandy, so we're doing a good job. You need to go to your school boards, your own school boards, and start sitting in those meetings. You need to get up and speak because everything goes on record, and you need to start asking questions and hold them accountable because things are not going to change unless you get up and move and do something. And not only that, with Kelly Kohls, with the OSBLC, one of the first things I did is went to the school board president and I gave them their website. Everybody I meet, I talk about what's going on with Common Core. Even in the swimming pool, I was talking to some ladies in the swimming pool about Common Core, and I gave them Kelly's website because that debate's fantastic. Speakers 1, 2, and 3 will make you dizzy, and I'm not going to say skip them because it'll give you the idea of the mindset that we're running up against. Speakers 4, 5, and 6 from the Pioneer Institute,
the
Heartland Institute,
Hoosiers Against Common Core.
Hoosiers Against Common Core,
I forget the other one.
but Joy Pullman, Heather Croson, Emmett McGurty, and they really give you a clear indication of what's going on.
And if your parents or grandparents, no reason to be sitting on the bench, because this game needs all of us as players. Okay, so I just want to say, you know, Matthew 16:8, it would be better for a millstone to be hung around your neck than to harm one of these. Well, I believe as a Christian that God's going to hold us accountable not only for what we do, but for what we don't do. Okay, and so our nation is a Christian nation. Regardless of what Mr. Obama has said, we are a Christian nation, and our Christian values should be not only re-implemented, but we need to stand firmly on them. And God is an awesome God. He's omnipotent. He is sovereign. And if you think that you can't get things done, I got news for you. I've been doing things ever since I met Kelly, and ever since I came to my first meeting with Clara. I can't believe how I've seen God move. It's amazing. And the last thing I want to mention is there's a gentleman named Joseph Ray. Have any of you ever heard of Joseph Ray? He's a mathematician that actually wrote books and published books here in Ohio. And if you go to the back of one of his primary books, what he mentions is it was typical for a blacksmith to carry in his cap a Greek Testament. And it used to be typical for everyone to be able to read classics, okay, classic literature in Latin and Greek texts. Can anyone in this room read anything in Latin, let alone a classic? I certainly can't. But I have implemented a classical education. My daughter can actually speak Latin, 1 John from verses 1 through 7. She can read them, she can speak them, she can write them. Okay, if she can do that by age 9, imagine what we can do with our country if we turn our education around back to a classical. In my opinion, we should turn it back to a Christian education. I think that's possible, but it would take everybody in this room and more to